All right. Well, today we'll be looking at the FA Cup third round match between United and Aston Villa. Man U ended up winning from an early goal by Scott McTominay to top off a 1-0 victory. And this puts us through the next round of the FA Cup, where we'll play Middlesbrough early next month. This was Villa's second game with Stevie G and his new manager. And while Villa's a solid team with their main threats, namely Watkins and Buendia, who both did a fairly good job this game, Villa were without Ashley Young, who's a former Man U player, and the recently admitted Philip Coutinho. Now, Villa lined up this game in a 4-3-3 and generally looked to get the ball to either Watkins or Ings. They were a 4-3-3, but had their wingers kind of tuck in to have some more defensive solidity around the center. Watkins on the right generally would kind of peel out a little bit more to be more of that threat, whereas Buendia would kind of come centrally and kind of progress the ball through the midfield. But Rangnick, contrary to previous games, lined up in what looked like a 4-2-3-1 instead of his 4-2-2-2. He had Cavani up top with Rashford on the left and Greenwood on the right, with Bruno going into his favorite position in the number 10 role. What ended up happening with the wingers was Rashford looked to sometimes be up top, closer to the vertical lane with Cavani, whereas Green would kind of drop off alongside more of the midfield area. Most of the time, Greenwood would either tuck the line when he didn't have the ball, and Dalot would kind of pinch in. And I think that was pretty good positional play from both players. When Greenwood would tuck in, Dalot would generally go out. So there was no like vertical overload in these channels, and they would be able to create these triangles on the side. On the other end, which is the end I think that worked, was Greenwood would have the ball here, and Dalot would make this type of run right here into the box. And so he would come here. This would kind of drag a couple players along the run. He'll kind of drag him out, but he has Cavani as well, so he's kind of wary. So usually, like this guy drops off, or he stays with here, and this poses a unique problem because Greenwood is fairly good at reading the game. He's a fairly good passer of the ball, so he can slip Dalot in right here. Rangnick knows that Greenwood's favorite foot is his left foot, but at the same time, he also knows that Aston Villa they like to be centrally compact. And so it's much easier for Dalot's run to drag the defender a little bit back to give space for Greenwood than it is for Dalot's overlapping run to kind of peel the defender out. But what this does, secondly, is since Rangnick knows that like the favorite foot, like so more often than not, what Greenwood's going to do is shift onto his left. It allows like this backtracking defender to give space for Greenwood's left foot instead of his right foot. I think he was able to, more often than not, I think like around 90 something percent of the time, like Greenwood, after, Dalot created the space, shifted onto his left foot and looked for the shot. The output wasn't really great. So when Mourinho bought Dalot, right? He said at a press conference, quote, "I don't want to compare, especially not the number of titles, but he is probably the same age as Gary Neville when he came into the first team. Probably he can follow Neville in this dynamic of more than 10 years as United's right back with amazing conditions to improve because, as I was saying, he's 19 years old." He added, "He has all the attributes that a fullback needs: physicality, tactical intelligence, and technical quality combined with a Porto Academy mentality, which prepares players for the maturity they need at the professional level. In his age group, he's the best fullback in Europe, and we all believe he has a bright future ahead of him at Manchester United."
Let me talk a little bit more about Dalot and the history when Mourinho signed him. So Dalot was probably the most hyped prospect in FC Porto's academy at that time. He barely had any first team experience because Ricardo Pereira was one of Porto's best players that season. But Porto fans weren't too disappointed with Ricardo Pereira leaving for Leicester in the summer because they knew that they had even more hyped and a better youth prospect in Diogo Dalot. But then Dalot left a few months after Ricardo Pereira left for Leicester. So when Dalot came to United, Porto fans were actually very disappointed. They thought that they had a future in the right back position in Dalot. This is the type of player that we have on our hands.
If we look at how how Manu scored the goal. Greenwood has the ball, lays it off to Fred, who then kind of, doesn't kind of lets it drag over to his left foot. I mean, obviously he's an extremely left foot dominant player. So this is a natural kind of progression. But what this does for just players on the field is it kind of tricks them into thinking that Fred's passing options are pretty limited. And I think this is a really smart play from Fred overall. So when Fred kind of shifts this onto his left foot, what his field of vision kind of turns into is this, right? So it looks like the only natural pass that he can make is to Shaw right there, or whoever else was kind of in this general area during this play. But I think what Fred did really well, and I think what kind of was directed, kind of what Rangnick kind of urged him to do, and both him and McTominay, was to play a lot of progressive passes. And as he was shifting the ball to his left hand side, Fred takes a look in the box, and contrary to what his body positioning shows, which is the pass to Shaw, like the look to the box kind of allowed him to scan this general area. Scott, on the other hand, was making this darting run into the box, which he's been, I think, given a lot more license to do under Rangnick. We saw like him making a bunch of like outside the box shots, making these last minute runs.